Hello again, and welcome to the 316th consecutive week that we've been able to bring to you this program called Forum for a Better Understanding. We are so glad and so proud to be able to offer this program in which an interfaith panel discusses an important social issue. One of those issues that we have visited several times is mental health. And we're back again, as last week, with a panel that is being partly brought to us thanks to the Mental Health America of the Central Valley and the Mental Health Alliance, the Interfaith Mental Health Alliance, to be able to help us have a real contribution from many different professionals and chaplains who are ministering in different ways regarding faith and mental health. Our topic today is really called Walking Alongside People with Mental Illness, and we're hoping that if you were here last week, you're understanding the importance of this and why we gave it 2 weeks in a row to cover. We have our first guest back from last week is the Reverend Natalie Chamberlain, who is a Disciples of Christ minister, the pastor at the United Christian Church here in Fresno, and is the chair of that Interfaith Mental Health Alliance, a young group that just formed itself this year, but is also making strides to connect the community with services in mental health through church affiliations and bodies of religious conviction of interfaith persuasions, all of them. We have a new guest who's never been on, is Dave Weikel, who is an MSW and the executive director of Mental Health America of Central California. We want to thank him for being here. And across from me is another new guest on the forum, Lee Ayres, who is the project director of Stewards, Inc. of Fresno. Now, they come with all different experiences, and I'm wondering at the beginning of the show if they could share with us personally and professionally why it is that this topic of walking alongside people with mental illness would be an important issue they'd like to share on TV with us at Channel 49. Natalie, could you start?
It's important to me because of my congregation, but it became important in the first place because I have a sister who has spent her life struggling with severe depression, and she has very graciously over the years helped me to understand as best I can, not being in her shoes, what it is that she deals with. And because of that, I have worked very hard to make sure that other people don't have to struggle so hard to have their illness understood and to find help. So it's more for my sister than anyone else.
Well, thank you very much, Natalie, for sharing that. Dave, what is your main passion in this?
It's basically giving back, and it's because mental illness runs in my family. I have both an aunt as well as my son who experienced both bipolar disorder. I have also experienced several symptoms of major depression over my life. So in overcoming the disability from that, I dedicated my life to going back to school and really just saying, if I can do it, I want to be able to show that to other people that they can do it too.
Thank you very much. Lee.
Walking alongside is what we do at Stewards, Inc. As we'll discuss in the course of this conversation, we develop a relationship with our clients, and walking alongside is part of that experience.
I never know when a panel is assembled for me. Often I handpick people, but this was a gift, these last two programs, of meeting people I did not know and learning the depth of what they're going to be able to share with us. Thank you very much for the opening round of even sharing why we're here today, because these are personal issues. These are not things that we don't have in our families. I could go registering saying the same thing. Mental illness is something I would be knowing growing up. Parents, it's not to be avoided in life. What is to be avoided is thinking it is not to be dealt with. It is not to be cared for. There's no reason to talk about it on TV. There's more reason to talk about it in our churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples. This is what we could do for each other. Thank you for being here today. Dave, I'd like you to start with something very meaty, and I think it may take up half the program already. Help us with some vocabulary. What do we exactly mean in mental health when we talk about wellness, resiliency, recovery, and obviously social rehabilitation? And the crowning touch, why is the issue of relationship the most important in all of this?
Okay. Well, I will relate all these to actually mental health challenges and illness. I'll be as clear and concise as I can. Wellness, as it relates to mental illness, is being able to have an illness, a mental illness, but still being able to be successful in life. There are many people who have families, careers, and are doing just fine in life, and they're living well. The recovery process, or recovery, is the process through which a person overcomes disability they may have experienced from having a mental illness. Resiliency has to do with a person's capacity to address life's challenges, whether it's a mental illness, whether it's poverty, whatever that is. It's the both personal and social resources they can bring to bear. Social rehabilitation is a formal field that helps through relationship, helps the person to adapt to the symptoms they may have of mental illness so that they can be successful in their social environment and through changing the environment itself, whether it's people or places or things, and changing their behavior, their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And to tie that all back into personal relationship, one of the most disabling features of having a mental illness, especially if you disclose it to somebody, is the social isolation that can happen. I can tell you personally that with my son who has a mental illness, before he was diagnosed, people were really kind of wrapping around me and trying to want to really help. Once he had a diagnosis, that had an opposite effect. People actually turned away and said, and I could see that they were very challenged, that they were afraid, they were very hesitant about having anything to do with me, and I felt the isolation as a parent, and I've also felt it as a former client. So the quality and the quantity of interpersonal relationship is very essential in helping people to overcome and live well and recover from a mental illness, as it provides the resiliency needed to do that.
Thank you for clarifying those important words. Again, we use them all the time. We have ways that there are meetings about wellness. It's all about wellness. We see it on TV all the time. Resiliency, recovery, social rehabilitation. But I wonder if the panel wants to jump in where Dave left off, especially around how it is that relationship can be the most important of those concepts, and how that is the what we'd like to spend our energy on today.
A lot of our clients come to us from the hospital, where they've been there for a serious medical reason, or through an episode where there's a crisis, and it's so stabilizing for them to establish a working relationship with us. It starts with our responsibility for managing their money. Typically the case is they have a Social Security benefit, but because of their circumstance they're unable to manage it, and a family member isn't available to do it, so they enroll with us. Through the process of just establishing a plan for their money, but their life, a lot of trust develops.
And in my church, it's interesting because it's heartbreaking to hear that people would back away when they understand there's a problem. We work really hard to make sure that people who trust us with the information about what's going on with them aren't then shunned in any way. And there's one young woman in my congregation who the church is her only family, and through the last 7 years of her struggling with different episodes, she's found a stable place where she's got a family who really does make sure that she's got assistance in those times when she needs it, and a voice to help her understand that she's gotten off the path or recognize that she needs to catch some things that she's been missing or whatever. So it breaks my heart to think that somebody would turn away.
I've actually done quite a bit over the past few years. I've done quite a bit of outreach into the community, talking about mental health, helping people to understand what it is and what it isn't. as we've said in the last show, understanding it empowers people to actually be a part of quality relationship with somebody with mental illness. When I've talked to people about, so why is it that you feel fearful, hesitant, whatever the word is, to engage with somebody with a mental illness? They say, well, I don't want to make it worse. I don't feel I have the ability to help somebody. And then when I take away all the professional labels and tell them what it really is, they go, oh, that's all that it is? Oh, I can help with that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. So you've found a silver lining in even that initial rejection or inability to respond positively.
Well, part of it is learning how to listen behind words and to what they're meaning. Often what people mean and want to do is to help by not helping, which is not helpful. And that's what they're doing, is they're trying to be helpful, but it's having the opposite effect. And I've seen it with so many families because mental illness not only affects the person themselves, but also their families as well. You'll be, both the person and their family are often blamed for causing the mental illness still today, even with all the advances that we have. And so having that put upon you as a parent or as a client yourself, that you're a bad person because you're experiencing this, is very difficult to live with, and that lack of quality of relationship can be as devastating as the medical component of the illness. We often call it a biopsychosocial piece. The biological is the medical part, the social part is the social context, and the psychological part is often what does it mean to you to have this.
Unfortunately, they have told us that we have actually reached the midpoint of our program. So we want to tell you that don't go anywhere, because in 60 seconds we'll be back. We even have 2 more panelists that are going to join us. I want to thank Lee and Dave for having given us in this first half of the program so much to think about and so much to do. Thank you, and stay tuned.
KNXT TV is proud to say thank you to all its viewers who have given their support for over 25 years. And only through your support is KNXT able to provide spiritual and informative programming. Please remember KNXT in your long-term support through wills, bequests, trust, and plan giving. Your gift is important to the future of Catholic television. Help preserve the strength of KNXT's message based on the teachings of Christ. Keep KNXT in your future plans.
Hello again, and welcome to the second half of the second program, in which we're sharing around the importance of walking along those with mental illness. We have 2 new guests joining us at this point. Across from me is Chaplain Grimaldo Enriquez, who is the Community Regional Medical Center chaplain. We want to thank you for all the work you do at the hospital.
Thank you.
And to his side is my good friend, Dr. Charles Arokiasamy, who is a member of the Rehabilitation Counseling Department at California State University, Fresno, and a parishioner, as I am, at St. Paul Newman Center. Thanks, Charles, and thanks, Grimaldo, for joining us. Grimaldo, I have a really good question for you and Charles. Personally and professionally, what makes you so interested in this area of mental health and caring for people who are challenged with that possible mental illness?
Yes. As some of the previous panelists have said, there is a personal aspect to my interest and my passion. There is a mental illness in my extended family, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar. And professionally, as a pastor, I've had people in the congregation who suffered from mental illness. Oftentimes I would even go visit them when they had their episodes in the mental health clinics. So that kind of built in me a desire to help, and that's why I'm here.
So many ministers just come from the need of healing those that they have lived with and lived among.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Charles, what's your own professional and personal interest in this?
Mine's going to be a little disappointing and different in
It
the
is
sense
not
that
disappointing.
I haven't really...
We all have our stories.
Yeah, not personal stories growing up with mental illness. But I'd gone to the seminary to study to become a redemptorist, and they threw me out twice. But part of the reason is twice, yeah. But our charism, our calling was to break the bread for the poorest of the poor. So when I came here to go to school, and part of my discernment was working with people with disabilities was the poorest of the poor. They are like almost the third world within the third world, you know. And so I developed a passion for working with people with disabilities. And mental health is one of the disabilities. And so not specifically mental health, but any kind of disabilities I'm most interested in working with.
Well, I am so glad we have now someone from the university. It just brings us, we've had chaplaincy, institutions that work in this area, agencies, churches, temples. Thank you so much for joining the panel. Grimaldo, for you, a very interesting question, personal for you. Now, before your training as a chaplain, you also had considerable training working with the seriously mentally ill. You also took the new mental health first aid training, as what we learned earlier had been shared also prior. What bridge do you see between this discipline and the work that we could be doing better for our consumers?
Well, I think there's a lot of bridges, many bridges there, because we are working with the same people, whether they're parishioners or just people on the street, or as myself in the hospital setting, I get people from different religious traditions who are coming to the hospital with mental illnesses, and so I'm dealing with them, trying to help them to understand that their faith can be a source of strength and comfort and hope to them. And so we all need that. It doesn't matter where you're coming from, what your tradition or your background might be.
And Charles, what I'm wondering is, there's a question we didn't ask before, but it's really needing to be asked in this moment. Between Prozac and specialized treatment, what is it that you see that the faith community could be actively and proactively engaged in to really offer to those amongst us most readily needing mental health? What are we not doing that you would see professionally at the university? Where are we falling short?
That's a lovely question, Jim. Supposing you were depressed. Being a friend, I would call you, take you out for a cup of coffee, send you maybe chocolate, stick some Prozac in there without you knowing maybe. No, send you some chocolate.
They were good.
Or if it was Natalie, and unless you're open for flowers, send you flowers, a nice email. We'll do all those kinds of things. When you label somebody as a client, as a person with mental illness, immediately there's none of those resources, human kinds of relations, get cut off. It's Prozac. It's counseling, it's medication. So we become such almost inhuman in our treatment. When, if you're asking me what the needs of people with disabilities are, or people with mental illness, exactly the same thing as you and me. Mm-hmm. They want belonging, they want trust, they want love, they want to be important in somebody's life. Same, just like you and me.
Absolutely.
So, but we cut all this off, this ordinary, wonderful, human, healing, touching responses, and throw them into this cold clinical nonsense. And some of our professional codes actually cut us from doing things like that. And when I do some training, but I can't see the client about it. I can't talk about that. I've got to see them in my office. No, McDonald's is a great place to sit and chat. But we make it so inhuman almost. And that is so antithetical to treatment.
Why is that we have to do it that way? The others too can join in. Everyone seemed to not to applaud, but to second that this is the reality. Why, Charles? Why, Natalie? Why, Grimaldo, is it so restrictive?
Well, part of it has been, for a long time, there's just been, ever since the Enlightenment, a separation between science and faith or religion, and there is no separation. They answer different questions. But when you start getting touchy-feely, it's religion, not science. And the problem is that we are people, and we need human touch.
Exactly.
And we need human relationship, and that's science. I mean, that is a scientific fact.
Yes.
And we forget that.
And that's what we stress there in the hospital, especially as we bring in volunteers to help us in making those kinds of visits, supportive, caring visits. We stress to them, get to know that person. It's a human being that's there before you, and hear them out. Just your presence alone is very meaningful and very, very, very positive. So spend the time that you need to. As hospital chaplains, we're I would say maybe the only or one of the few disciplines in the hospital that comes in to be with the patient. Everybody else comes in to do something to the patient. They poke them, they take the BPs, whatever. We come in to be with them, to get to know them, to show them that somebody does care. So I really am appreciative of the fact that our hospital has chaplains to be there with those persons.
Oh, yeah. Getting back to something Charles said, but it may seem like a curveball, but it may move us along. It may. In the program that I see called In Treatment, there was one patient whom Charles seemed to be describing. He wanted, when he came in, to have a cup of tea with he definitely wanted it to be as if they were on a level that they could talk to as a friend. And it was almost disarming to the therapist to think he was being reduced to only being a friend. It was weird what transformation happened on the therapist to be made aware. To work with me, we need to have some tea together. And since you won't come with me to my tea store where I'll get some really nice tea, you better have something ready and we're going to enjoy tea together, won't we? This seems to be a point we should look at. How is it that we as faith believer, as whatever community we are in, are finding other media to do that, other ways to do this?
Absolutely a great place, and Natalie will agree, and Grimaldo too. That is one of the great things that churches can do, because they're not constricted by professional codes and liability issues as much. That's one of the biggest governing things is people don't want to get sued, so they stay away from taking some healthy risks. But churches meet that need of belonging, open the doors, come. I mean, I've heard so many times warnings come up, oops, lock the doors, be careful, there's a crazy person in the parking lot. That's the exact opposite reaction of the church is, there's a crazy person in the parking lot, open the doors, let them get us in.
Amen.
Get them in. It's the exact opposite reaction. Even though they're not so worried about liability as professionals, but still that automatic, stay out of there. If I can add one thing, it's really sad, especially with this Tucson the shooting in Tucson. They put that crazy, frightening face on the picture. Did so much damage to mental illness, the image of mental illness, that one picture all over the country on TV. Horrible, horrible picture. Instead of showing him as a human being. We keep focusing on people with mental illness as a danger. The facts, the data show that people with mental illness are 2.2 times more likely to suffer abuse by the not mentally ill people than the other way around. We are far more dangerous to people with that mental illness than they are to us. And a classic example, the world is so hostile to them, people don't dare mention they have mental illness. It's too frightening. This is a frightening world for people with mental illness.
And unfortunately, there have been times in our past and not so distant past when that fear has kept churches from being a safe haven for people who are struggling with whatever the disability might be. And thank God that there are churches and pastors and chaplains and people in our community who recognize the humanity of people, no matter what it is they struggle with, and are beginning to truly be the compassionate place they need to be able to offer a cup of tea in the midst of, are you sure you shouldn't see your doctor?
Yes.
But because there's a place for both.
Or asking, have you been taking your medications?
Right. But to exclude one or the other does no service to the person in need.
The golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If I was sick with depression, I would want somebody to care enough to spend some time with me, to just, offer me that cup of tea, and ask me, how are you doing today?
Right.
You know, that's what it's about, and that's what the churches should be doing
Well,
on a regular basis.
I have a sister, I mentioned her earlier, who struggles with depression, and she lives far from me. So, but all I have to do is hear her voice on the phone, and I know how she's doing. So I will call several times a day when I know she's not doing well. And I don't have to call more than once a week if she's doing fine, although I often do. But I know, and I call, and it touches my heart. She thanked me the other day for caring enough to call her. And what's a phone call? What's a phone call?
Natalie, Charles, please.
Just that example you get is great because it's not just anecdotal. It's in literature. I looked at a study. They studied the perspectives of the health giver. What did you do that made a difference? Oh, it was this behavioral intervention. It was this medication. Then they asked the patient. She said, "You know, doc, when I came to your office and you offered me a cigarette, that's when it happened for me." You know.
Yeah, and in our situation as chaplains in the hospital, many times patients or families have come back and said to us, you know, we really appreciated the fact that you stayed with us, that you were with us. It didn't matter what we said, what we did. It was just the fact of our presence, our healing, a supportive presence. That was most important to them.
Well, I want to thank the three of you and all the other panelists for their presence here today. It was a gift. It was a present you gave to all of us. I want to thank also Mental Health America of Central Valley, because what they've been able to do is assemble this panel, and you have now their website and their phone number if you'd be able to call them. We are really hoping you would be in touch with Mental Health America Central Valley. I also want to thank especially Grimaldo and Charles and Natalie for how they were able to also build on the other insights that were shared over these 2 weeks. We hope you'll go to our website, KNXT.TV, to be able to watch this program in case you don't receive the signal or your friends don't on regular ways of seeing TV. We are available to you on the web at KNXT.TV. We're also on YouTube. This program is being filmed and put on YouTube, so you will be able to share it later on. Just go to our site, youtube.com, KNXT1. Thank you for watching and supporting Channel 49 any way that you can. We will be back next week with another one of these forums, hoping that you are also participating in the forum by discussing with our panelists at the site knxtwordpress.com. We thank you for joining us. We hope you are having good programs at Channel 49 that support you in your work. Till next week, God bless.